There is a reason why you remember Luke Skywalker staring at the twin suns. There is a reason why Harry Potter receiving a letter still feels strangely emotional. There is a reason why Neo taking the red pill became more than a movie scene. And there is a reason why some brands, creators, leaders, and movements feel almost impossible to ignore. It is not just good writing. It is not just charisma. It is not just marketing. It is a pattern, an ancient pattern. Long before Hollywood discovered it, long before brands learned how to sell with it, long before influencers started building personal empires around it, this pattern was already living inside myths, religions, fairy tales, legends, and dreams. Joseph Campbell gave it a name: the hero's journey. But what most people miss is this: Campbell was not just explaining stories, he was explaining why human beings believe in them, why we follow certain people, why we trust certain brands, why we feel pulled towards certain transformations, and why, at some point in life, every person begins to feel that their old world is no longer enough. Because the most powerful stories do not simply entertain us, they initiate us. They make us feel that someone has gone into the unknown before us, faced the dragon, survived the darkness, and returned with something we need: a lesson, a product, a method, a truth, a way out. And once you understand this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. In movies, in marketing, in creators, in religion, in your own ambition, in your own pain. And perhaps most strangely, in the story you are already living, even if you have not recognized yourself as the hero yet. So before we talk about brands, sales, followers, cinema, or influence, we need to begin where every journey begins: in the ordinary world, the place where nothing seems mythic yet, the place where the hero is still asleep. Most people hear the hero's journey and think of movies. A young person leaves home, a mentor appears, a villain rises, a battle happens, the hero wins, the music swells, and something in us feels that an ancient circle has been completed. But Joseph Campbell was not only talking about cinema. He was pointing to something older than Hollywood, older than branding, older than the modern obsession with becoming visible. He noticed that human beings, across cultures that never met each other, kept telling the same kind of story: different gods, different monsters, different languages. But underneath the costumes, the same movement kept appearing. Someone begins in a familiar world. Something disturbs that world. The person is called beyond what they know. They resist. They are guided. They cross into the unknown. They face trials. They lose something. They discover something. They are changed. And if they survive, they return carrying something that can help the world they left behind. That is the shape: separation, initiation, return. And once you see it, it becomes hard to unsee. You see it in myths, fairy tales, superhero films, founders explaining how they built a company, creators telling you how they went from ignored to followed, and brands promising transformation. Because the human mind does not only want information, it wants movement. It wants to know where someone started, what they faced, what they became, and why that matters now. A fact can be useful, but a journey can be believed. Campbell did not invent the pattern. He named what we were already responding to. The hero's journey was not created in a writing room. It was discovered in the symbolic behavior of human beings. Campbell looked at myths and saw that these stories were not random entertainment. They were maps. Maps for leaving childhood. Maps for facing fear. maps for entering adulthood, maps for returning with wisdom. This is why the pattern sells without feeling like selling. A politician who says, "I came from nothing," is offering a journey. An entrepreneur who says, "I failed for years before I built this," is offering a journey. An artist who says, "Nobody understood me at first," is offering a journey. A creator who says, "I struggled with this too," is offering a journey. A teacher who says, "I made the mistakes so you don't have to," is offering a journey. They are saying, "I went into the unknown, I faced something, I returned with an answer, and now I can guide you." That is mythic structure wearing modern clothes. Sometimes a suit, sometimes a hoodie, sometimes a ring light and an affiliate link. Humanity evolves, but the pattern has suspiciously good Wi-Fi. The hero is not interesting because he is perfect. The hero is interesting because he is incomplete. At the beginning, the hero is missing something. Sometimes courage, sometimes truth, sometimes identity. Sometimes the missing thing is a part of the soul that has been buried or denied. That is why we care. A perfect hero is decorative. A broken hero is magnetic. We recognize the fracture. We recognize the hesitation. We recognize that uncomfortable moment when life asks something from you and your first instinct is not bravery. It is negotiation. Not now. Not me. I'm not ready. Someone else could do this better. This refusal of the call is one of the most human parts of the journey. And it is also one of the most important parts of marketing, branding, and influence. Because before anyone buys a product, follows a leader, trusts a creator, or begins a transformation, they refuse the call. They hesitate. They compare. They doubt. They stay in the ordinary world because the ordinary world may be painful, but at least it is familiar. Familiarity is one of the strongest prisons ever built. It does not need chains. It only needs routine. The ordinary world is not always terrible. Sometimes it is comfortable. Sometimes everyone around you calls it success. Inside the hero, something begins to ache. A quiet dissatisfaction. A sense that life is functioning, but not living. A sense that meaning has started leaking through the walls. This is where the journey begins. Not with action, but with disturbance. A crack. A whisper. A message. A loss. A strange invitation. A moment where the old story stops convincing you. This is why movies use the hero's journey so well. A good movie does not begin with the hero already transformed. It begins with the hero trapped in an identity that is too small. Luke is not yet a Jedi. Harry is not yet a wizard. Neo is not yet free. Frodo is not yet carrying the burden. They begin ordinary, limited, hidden. Then something calls them out. Campbell's genius was seeing that this was never just about movies, but about the architecture of transformation. Now that we understand what Campbell really found, we can see why movies use this pattern so obsessively. Cinema did not make the hero's journey powerful. Cinema simply gave it a screen. Think about Luke Skywalker. When we first meet him, he is not a legend. He is a restless young man staring at the horizon with the ache of someone who knows his life is too small, but does not yet know what is calling him. That image works because almost everyone has felt it. Life asking for something more but not explaining the price yet. Then the call arrives. A message, a mentor, a weapon, a war. Suddenly the ordinary world cracks open, and Luke has to decide whether he will remain inside a familiar cage or step into a story that could destroy him. Harry Potter begins in a cupboard. Symbolically, He begins in a life where his true identity has been hidden from him. The letter from Hogwarts is not only an invitation to a school, it is a call to remember who he is. Neo begins inside a system he cannot name. He feels reality is wrong before he can prove it. The red pill is not just a plot device, it is the threshold. It is the moment a person chooses truth over comfort, even when truth makes life harder. Frodo begins in peace, and that is what makes his journey painful. He is given a burden. Not every hero is called by ambition. Some are called by responsibility. Katniss does not volunteer because she wants adventure. She volunteers because love gives her no other choice. These characters stay with us because each one carries a different face of the same movement. The dreamer, the hidden child, the awakened seeker, the reluctant bearer, the protective survivor. They are different, but they all begin in a world that cannot contain who they are becoming. This is why the hero's journey is not just a checklist. If you reduce it to 12 steps, you may understand structure, but miss the soul. The mentor is the voice that tells the hero, "You are not crazy for feeling called." The threshold is the point where the old identity can no longer keep control. The dragon is whatever guards the treasure the hero needs. Sometimes it is an empire. Sometimes it is a dark lord. Sometimes it is a machine world. Sometimes it is fear, shame, grief, or the version of yourself that learned how to survive by staying small. That is why movie villains work best when they are mirrors. Darth Vader is what Luke could become. Voldemort is power without love. Agent Smith is a system trying to erase awakening itself. The best stories understand that the outer battle only matters because it reflects an inner one. Audiences feel this. They feel when a character is not just fighting someone but becoming someone. This is why the darkest moment matters so much. In almost every unforgettable hero story, there is a point where the journey seems to fail. The mentor dies. The plan collapses. The hero loses faith. The burden becomes too heavy. The old self cannot continue, but the new self has not fully emerged. This is the symbolic death. Without it, transformation feels cheap. A hero who never breaks, never truly changes. A brand that never shows struggle feels polished, but distant. A creator who pretends to have always been confident may be impressive, but not magnetic. We trust transformation when we can see the cost. Movies know this. They do not only show the victory, they show the wound before the victory, the hesitation before the courage, the exile before the return. And this is where storytelling begins to touch marketing. The audience is not only asking, what happens next? They are asking, do I believe this change is real? When a film shows us a hero crossing the threshold, facing the ordeal, and returning changed, we experience the emotional proof of transformation. And when a brand or creator tells a story well, they are doing something similar. They are showing us that change has a path. They are making the invisible visible. That is why before and after stories work. That is why origin stories work. That is why founder stories work. That is why testimonies work. They compress the hero's journey into something the audience can feel. I was here. I faced this. I found something. Now I can help you cross. But movies do one more thing many marketers forget. They let the hero earn the transformation. They do not simply announce it, they make us witness it. So if you want a story to move people, do not only show the result. Show the distance traveled. Show the call. Show the resistance. Show the wound. show the price. Because what people believe is not perfection. What people believe is a journey that feels paid for. And once we see how cinema uses this pattern to create unforgettable characters, we understand why brands and creators use the same pattern to create trust. Now that we understand what Campbell really found, we can see why movies use this pattern so obsessively. Cinema did not make the hero's journey powerful. Cinema simply gave it a screen. Think about Luke Skywalker. When we first meet him, he is not a legend. He is a restless young man staring at the horizon with the ache of someone who knows his life is too small, but does not yet know what is calling him. That image works because almost everyone has felt it. Life asking for something more but not explaining the price yet. Then the call arrives. A message, a mentor, a weapon, a war. Suddenly the ordinary world cracks open and Luke has to decide whether he will remain inside a familiar cage or step into a story that could destroy him. Harry Potter begins in a cupboard. Symbolically, he begins in a life where his true identity has been hidden from him. The letter from Hogwarts is not only an invitation to a school, it is a call to remember who he is. Neo begins inside a system he cannot name. He feels reality is wrong before he can prove it. The red pill is not just a plot device, it is the threshold. It is the moment a person chooses truth over comfort, even when truth makes life harder. Frodo begins in peace, and that is what makes his journey painful. He is given a burden. Not every hero is called by ambition. Some are called by responsibility. Katniss does not volunteer because she wants adventure. She volunteers because love gives her no other choice. These characters stay with us because each one carries a different face of the same movement. The dreamer, the hidden child, the awakened seeker, the reluctant bearer, the protective survivor. They are different, but they all begin in a world that cannot contain who they are becoming. This is why the hero's journey is not just a checklist. If you reduce it to 12 steps, you may understand structure, but miss the soul. The mentor is the voice that tells the hero, "You are not crazy for feeling called." The threshold is the point where the old identity can no longer keep control. The dragon is whatever guards the treasure the hero needs. Sometimes it is an empire. Sometimes it is a dark lord. Sometimes it is a machine world. Sometimes it is fear, shame, grief, or the version of yourself that learned how to survive by staying small. That is why movie villains work best when they are mirrors. Darth Vader is what Luke could become. Voldemort is power without love. Agent Smith is a system trying to erase awakening itself. The best stories understand that the outer battle only matters because it reflects an inner one. Audiences feel this. They feel when a character is not just fighting someone but becoming someone. This is why the darkest moment matters so much. In almost every unforgettable hero story, there is a point where the journey seems to fail. The mentor dies. The plan collapses. The hero loses faith. The burden becomes too heavy. The old self cannot continue, but the new self has not fully emerged. This is the symbolic death. Without it, transformation feels cheap. A hero who never breaks, never truly changes. A brand that never shows struggle feels polished, but distant. A creator who pretends to have always been confident may be impressive, but not magnetic. We trust transformation when we can see the cost. Movies know this. They do not only show the victory, they show the wound before the victory, the hesitation before the courage. the exile before the return. And this is where storytelling begins to touch marketing. The audience is not only asking, what happens next? They are asking, do I believe this change is real? When a film shows us a hero crossing the threshold, facing the ordeal, and returning changed, we experience the emotional proof of transformation. And when a brand or creator tells a story well, they are doing something similar. They are showing us that change has a path. They are making the invisible visible. That is why before and after stories work. That is why origin stories work. That is why founder stories work. That is why testimonies work. They compress the hero's journey into something the audience can feel. I was here. I faced this. I found something. Now I can help you cross. But movies do one more thing many marketers forget. They let the hero earn the transformation. They do not simply announce it. They make us witness it. So if you want a story to move people, do not only show the result. Show the distance traveled. Show the call. Show the resistance. Show the wound. Show the price. Because what people believe is not perfection. What people believe is a journey that feels paid for. And once we see how cinema uses this pattern to create unforgettable characters, we understand why brands and creators use the same pattern to create trust. Creators are perhaps the clearest modern example of the hero's journey, because their product is never only the product. Their product is also their story. People may arrive for information, but they stay because they begin to understand the person behind it. They sense that this creator did not simply learn something. They went somewhere. They crossed a private desert. They wrestled with confusion, rejection, silence, or invisibility. And now they have returned with a language, a method, a point of view. This is why some creators feel magnetic before they sell anything. Their audience can sense a journey, not a perfect one, a real one. The creator was once in the ordinary world too. Maybe unknown, maybe insecure, maybe speaking into a camera while wondering if anyone would ever care. Then came the call, a subject they could not stop thinking about, a wound they wanted to understand, a skill they needed to master. At first, they refuse it like everyone else. They overthink. They compare. They disappear for weeks. They tell themselves the timing is wrong. Their voice is not ready. Their story is not interesting enough. That is the refusal of the call with Wi-Fi and analytics. But if they continue, they cross the threshold. They publish. They become visible. And visibility is always a kind of underworld. Because the moment you put your voice into the world begins answering back. Sometimes with praise, sometimes with silence, sometimes with criticism, sometimes with the terrible emptiness of a video that took your soul to make and receive 12 views. 3 of them probably from you checking if it uploaded correctly. This is where the trials begin. Learning the craft, finding the voice, understanding the audience, facing shame, facing the gap between what they wanted to create and what they can create today. Slowly, if they keep going, the audience starts to understand the creator's pattern. They learn what this person stands for, what they oppose, what they suffered through, what transformation they represent. And this is when a creator becomes more than a channel. They become a narrative people can join. This is why origin stories matter online. The audience wants to know, why you? Why this message? Why now? What did you see that others missed? What did you survive that makes your knowledge feel different? A creator with no story may still be useful, but a creator with a clear journey becomes memorable. Because the audience is not only buying content, they are buying meaning. They are buying the sense that this person's knowledge was earned. That is why the return with the elixir matters. In the hero's journey, the hero does not come back just to look impressive. The hero returns with something useful for the community. In creator culture, this separates attention from authority. Attention says, "Look at me." Authority says, "I went there. Here is what I brought back." The elixir can be a method, a philosophy, a warning, a framework, a discipline, or a creative language. But it must be useful, otherwise the journey becomes vanity. This is where many creators lose trust. They make the story all about themselves, their pain, their rise, their enemies, their transformation. But they forget the return. They forget to bring something back. And when there is no elixir, the audience eventually feels used. They came to be guided, not to applaud someone else's mythology forever. The best creators understand this balance. They reveal enough of the wound to make the wisdom human, but not so much that the wound becomes the entire brand. They tell the story, but they do not trap the audience inside it. They use the past as a bridge, not as a throne. Because the real power of a creator's journey is not that the audience worships the hero. It is that the audience begins to recognize their own call. They watch someone else cross a threshold and think, maybe I can cross mine. They see someone else return with language and think, maybe my confusion can become useful too. This is why creator storytelling is so persuasive. It is not only persuasion, it is identification. The audience does not simply ask, do I like this person? They ask, often unconsciously, can this person help me become who I am trying to become? And when the answer feels like yes, trust begins. Joseph Campbell matters far beyond mythology because he helps us understand why stories sell, why brands become symbols, and why creators become guides. Deep down, people are not only looking for content, they are looking for orientation. They want to know where they are in the story. They want to know whether the pain means failure or initiation. Sometimes, one voice returning from the unknown is enough to make someone else finally hear their own call. But there is one more layer to this pattern, and it may be the most uncomfortable one. The hero's journey does not only explain how stories sell, it also explains why people are captured by the wrong stories. If human beings are always looking for meaning, transformation, mentors, enemies, and redemption, then whoever controls the story can influence what people desire. This is where myth becomes powerful, but also dangerous. A brand can invite you into growth, or it can make you feel incomplete forever. A creator can help you hear your own call, or they can make you dependent on their voice. A movement can give people courage, or it can invent dragons just to keep them afraid. The structure itself is not good or bad. It is a vessel. What matters is what fills it. Modern culture is full of small myths pretending to be sacred. The myth that you will be worthy when your body looks right. The myth that you will be free when you have enough money. The myth that you will matter when strangers approve of you. The myth that real life begins when the algorithm chooses you. These are stories too. They have an ordinary world, a wound, a promised transformation, and an elixir at the end. But the elixir keeps moving. You reach one goal and another appears. You buy one solution, and a new insecurity is born. You follow one guide and suddenly you need 10 more. This is the shadow side of storytelling. A false myth does not liberate the hero. It keeps the hero circling the same threshold forever. Always almost ready. Always almost healed. Always almost successful. Always one product, one body, one viral moment away from arrival. Campbell's work matters beyond cinema and marketing because it teaches us to ask a deeper question. What story is being offered to me, and what kind of person does this story require me to become? Every story has a hidden demand. Some stories ask you to become braver. Some ask you to become more honest. Some ask you to serve something beyond yourself. Others ask you to remain anxious, hungry, performative, ashamed, and easy to sell to. That is why the villain in the modern hero's journey is not always a monster outside the cave. Sometimes it is a narrative that turns your insecurity into a business model. And this is where personal responsibility begins. If stories shape desire, then we need to become conscious of the stories we are living inside. Not cynical. Conscious. There is a difference. Cynicism says, everything is manipulation. Consciousness says, let me see the structure before I surrender to it. When you watch a movie follow a creator, buy a product, join a movement, or build your own brand, you can ask, who is the hero here? What is the wound? What is the promised transformation? Who is the mentor? What is the dragon? What is the elixir? And who benefits if I believe this story? These questions do not destroy meaning, they purify it. They help you separate the stories that awaken you from the stories that consume you. The real hero's journey is not about becoming the main character in a fantasy of self-importance. It is about becoming mature enough to recognize the call that is actually yours. Not every invitation is a calling. Not every mentor is a guide. Not every dragon is real. Not every transformation is worth the price. And not every story that moves you is meant to lead you. This is especially important for anyone building a brand, a channel, a business, or a public voice. Once you understand the power of story, the temptation is to use it only for attention. To dramatize everything, to turn every struggle into content, to make your audience feel that your life is one endless movie trailer. But real authority is quieter than that. Real authority does not need to manufacture darkness in order to appear luminous. It tells the truth with shape. It gives people a path without stealing their agency. It invites transformation without humiliating the person who has not transformed yet. That is the difference between manipulation and meaning. Manipulation says, you are broken and only I can save you. Meaning says, you are at a threshold and this may help you cross. One makes the audience smaller, the other helps them stand. Maybe this is why the best stories last. They do not trap us in admiration. They return us to ourselves. When you leave a great film, a great teacher, or a great creator, you do not only think, they are extraordinary. You think quietly, something in me is being called too. That is the ethical heart of the hero's journey. When this is done well, stories stop being decoration. They become initiation. In the end, the most important story is not the one being sold to you. It is the one you choose to live. Now, if you are still here with me, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and keep walking with us. Not because this is just another video about movies or marketing, but because this channel is about the hidden structures shaping the visible world. The stories behind desire, the symbols behind behavior, the myths behind the choices we think are rational. And if this kind of language speaks to something in you, then you are probably not here by accident. You are looking for a deeper way to understand people, culture, influence, and maybe yourself. So subscribe, stay close, and let us keep following these invisible patterns together. Because now we need to bring this back to you. Not as a consumer, not as a viewer, not even as a creator, but as a person living inside a story. Campbell's work becomes truly powerful when you stop asking only, how does this explain films? Or how does this help brands sell? And begin asking, where am I in the journey? That question changes everything. Because the hero's journey is not always dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it looks like a person quietly realizing they cannot keep living the same way. Sometimes it looks like losing interest in a life everyone else still admires. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion, grief, restlessness, or a strange envy of people who seem more alive. The call often arrives disguised as discomfort, and because we do not recognize it, we try to medicate it with noise. We scroll, we buy, we perform, we optimize. We try to become more productive inside a life that may be asking us to become more honest. But the call does not disappear just because we ignore it. It becomes quieter, heavier, more intimate. It starts speaking through the body, through dreams, through resentment, through the strange sadness of succeeding at something that no longer feels like yours. This is why knowing the hero's journey can become a mirror. It helps you ask, am I still in the ordinary world? Am I refusing the call? Am I crossing the threshold? Am I in the trials? Am I facing the dragon? Am I trying to return with something I have not fully understood yet? These are not abstract questions. They are practical. If you are building a business, maybe your call is to stop hiding behind research and finally publish. If you are creating content, maybe your dragon is not the algorithm, but the fear of being seen. If you are changing careers, maybe the threshold is leaving behind an identity that once protected you. If you are healing, maybe the ordeal is facing the memory you built your whole personality around avoiding. And if you are teaching, leading, selling, parenting, writing, or creating, maybe your return with the elixir is not about becoming impressive. Maybe it is about becoming useful. This is where the journey becomes mature. The hero does not return to prove superiority. The hero returns to serve. That is a very different kind of power. Modern culture often sells the hero's journey as personal achievement. Become the main character. Build the empire. Win the game. Prove them wrong. But Campbell's pattern is deeper than revenge dressed as ambition. The return matters because transformation is incomplete until it becomes a gift. You learn something, you survive something, you see something. And then the question becomes, what can this become for others? Not every wound needs to become content. Not every private pain needs to be performed. But every real transformation carries some kind of elixir. More compassion, more clarity, more courage, more discernment, more truth. And when you bring that back with humility, your story starts helping other people locate their own. That is why the best brands, films, and creators do not leave us obsessed with them. They leave us more awake to ourselves. A great story does not say, "Look how extraordinary I am." It says, "Look what is possible when a human being answers the call." And maybe that is the real reason stories sell. Not because people are gullible, not because everyone wants to be manipulated, but because deep down, people want to believe transformation is possible. They want to see a path through chaos. They want evidence that fear can be crossed, that meaning can return, that the ordinary world is not the final chapter. And when a story gives them that evidence, they lean in, they listen, they trust, they remember. So before we close this journey, there is one final turn. If stories shape movies, brands, creators, and your own life, then the last question is not whether you are living a story. You are. The question is whether the story is worthy of your life. So now we return to the beginning. Joseph Campbell was not simply giving writers a structure, he was showing us something about human beings. We do not move through life only by logic. We move through images, patterns, symbols, wounds, hopes, fears, and stories. We follow the people who make our chaos feel like a path. We trust the brands that place our desire inside a journey. We remember the films that allow us to watch a soul become larger than its fear. And we are moved by creators who do not only speak from knowledge, but from return. They went somewhere. They saw something. They came back carrying language. This is why the hero's journey continues to shape movies, brands, and your life. Because every human being is trying to understand change. We want to know why the old world stopped working. We want to know why the call feels so frightening. We want to know whether the dragon is there to destroy us or to guard something we need. We want to know whether the darkness means we failed or whether it means initiation has begun. And maybe this is why the same story keeps returning. In ancient myths, in religious imagination, in novels, in cinema, in advertising, in business, in personal brands, in private diaries nobody will ever read. The form changes, but the hunger remains. We want transformation to have meaning. We want suffering to become wisdom. We want the wound to become a door. But this is also where we must be careful. Not every story deserves your belief. Not every guide deserves your trust. Not every promised transformation is liberation. Some stories make you more awake. Others make you more dependent. Some stories help you recognize your call. Others keep you ashamed enough to buy forever. So the question is not simply, what story sells? The deeper question is, what story heals? What story makes you more honest, more courageous, more useful, more alive? What story returns you to your own responsibility instead of stealing it from you? Because the real hero's journey does not end with applause. It ends with return. The hero comes back carrying something that can serve life, a flame, a truth, a method, a warning, a song, a map, a way through the dark. This is the difference between performance and purpose. Performance wants to be admired. Purpose wants to become useful. And perhaps the most powerful brands, films, and creators are the ones that understand this without saying it directly. They do not merely show us a hero, they awaken the hero in us. They do not only sell a product, they sell the possibility of crossing. They do not only tell us what happened, they help us feel that transformation is still possible. And when a story does that, we do not forget it. We carry it. Sometimes for years. Sometimes for a lifetime. Maybe you are in the ordinary world right now. Maybe you are hearing a call you have been trying to ignore. Maybe you are standing at the threshold, pretending you are still researching when you are really afraid. Maybe you are in the trials, wondering why everything became harder after you said yes. Maybe you are facing the dragon. Maybe you are returning with an elixir you have not yet learned how to name. Wherever you are, the pattern does not remove the difficulty, but it gives the difficulty shape. And shape can be a mercy, because chaos becomes less cruel when you realize it may be part of a crossing. The point is not to force your life into a myth. The point is to notice where meaning is already trying to speak. Through your resistance, through your desire, through the strange thing you keep avoiding, through the quiet knowledge that one version of you is ending and another is asking to begin. That is why Joseph Campbell still matters. He reminds us that the oldest stories are not behind us. They are beneath us. They are the deep structures under our choices, our fears, our ambitions, our art, our marketing, our love, our work, and our becoming. And if you understand them, you do not only become a better storyteller, you become harder to manipulate. You become more conscious of what you are buying, following, building, and becoming. You begin to ask better questions. Who is the hero? Who is the guide? What is the wound? What is the promise? What is the price? What is the elixir? And perhaps most importantly, is this story worthy of my life? If this video gave you a new way to see movies, brands, creators, or your own journey, subscribe to the channel, share it with 5 people who think deeply, and leave a sincere comment below. Tell me where you think you are in the hero's journey right now, and what topic you want us to explore next. Because sometimes the next call does not arrive as thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a question you cannot stop hearing. And once you hear it, the old world is never quite the same again.